Growing an e-commerce brand is hard. Doing it profitably is even harder. My name is Arsalan, founder of ECOM Media. We grow brands and invest in the DTC businesses that we love. In 2023, we spent around $96 million growing our brands and generated around $300 million back. And today, I'm going to be showing you 3 of them, what we did at different stages of growth, and hopefully you can learn something for yourself to grow your own businesses too. The first thing is first, understand your numbers. On a weekly basis, we order anywhere from 5 to 10 DTC brands, and without a doubt, the number one mistake that we see is that brands don't really understand how much they're making per sale, what is their true return, and what bids they should be aiming for. In front of me right now is a very simple sheet that can help you start to do that. This takes into account the AOV of the store, the margins on it after you take out all of the expenses, and the ROAS required, as well as the CPA, your cost to acquire a customer, that you need to hit within your ad platforms to achieve the desired growth that you want for your own DTC brand. Now, from experience, I can tell you the most ideal scenario that you want is to target a ROAS of under 2 with at least 10 to 15% profit margin. Now, if you're a brand that requires a much higher return to do that due to the margins on your product, don't worry. It's not over just yet. Another important part of DTC brands is also understanding your LTV. Now, especially if you're a consumable packaged goods brand or sell a product that requires people to come back and buy again, subscribe, runs out eventually so they have to top up, then you'll definitely want to focus on LTV. Now, niches like supplements, nutrition, food, accessory add-ons will all have these sort of qualities. So if you're within those niches, that's probably going to be something you need to look at. In these cases, you can leverage your LTV to decrease the ROAS that you need to be profitable for the business. And yes, I said decrease the ROAS required. Now, why might that be? Now, in a moment, I'm going to show you 3 brands that we scaled in 2023, how we did it following these strategies. And you'll notice one thing, that the bigger the brand, the lower the ROAS is going to be on those brands to acquire new customers. And one of the key reasons is due to the concept called the CAC or CPA Regression Theory. Now, I would say it's less of a theory, and to be honest, it's more of a fact in advertising, but let me explain. In the world of advertising, on Meta, on Google, on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Bing, wherever you might be doing, you can plot all of your customers onto a universal graph. And I'll give you an example. Imagine you're selling to the entirety of the world and you're trying to acquire every single customer on that curve that you're about to draw. Now, your first customer can be your mother. She won't need to be convinced to buy from you, and it will really take, for most of you, just simply asking to buy the product, and she would. Now imagine you're trying to sell to the last person in the world in the most remote part of civilization. You would need to fly out there, make the journey, learn to communicate with them, teach them your language, teach them about the product that you're selling, educate them on why that product benefits their life, and then finally sell them. So I ask you, what would cost more? That last person. This is the exact same concept as running ads to acquire customers. The more you scale, the higher your cost to acquire customer will become. And that's exactly why, if you're one of those brands that thinks you'll be doubling your spending and you'll be getting more profits, think again. You need to take into account your cost to acquire customer rising as you scale and plan around it and forecast around that, because that is a mistake that we see a lot of DTC brands, especially in the e-commerce world, do on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you want us to audit your business for free, hit the link below and my team will reach out and do the needful. So let's dive into how we grew these 3 brands and 3 different stages of growth and how you can learn from it. Now, brand number 1, this was a really fun brand to work with. After hitting almost 1 million in their first year of business, they came to us and wanted to scale hyper aggressively to keep up with investor pressure and promises. Now, I will advise you, growing that rapidly is never a good idea, as it adds a lot of risk and something is going to go wrong, or at least the probability of it will increase. But we did what we could within their limitations. Now, this brand has very high margins. So for one, it has an advantage there to grow aggressively. The second thing that aided us in this was the fact that it's also a CPG brand, meaning a consumer goods brand, and it had a really high LTV. Now, to be exact, the LTV was about 32% on the 60-day mark. What does that even mean? I'm sure you're wondering. Now, quite simply, it means that on day 60, 32% of their customers would come back and buy again, which is a really great figure. Now, I mentioned LTV earlier, but let me demonstrate why it's super important in this case. As a CPG brand, your cost to acquire a customer for subscribers, etc., is not really going to be that cheap in general compared to your average order value. When you start to bid based on your 60-day LTV, there is a reason for this, and there's a reason why 60 days is the fact that we use that. 60 days is the magical number for most credit cards, for most credit lines, and this can be extended to about 60 days in general for the entirety of the world. Now, this is called the negative cash flow conversion cycle. This means that instead of bidding for a cost to acquire customer of, let's say, £30 in this case for this brand, I can now bid for 32% more because my LTV allows for it. I can now afford to acquire a customer for more on their first order because I know that 32% of those customers will come back and buy within 60 days. AKA, before you make the first payment to your advertising platform for acquiring that customer, you're leveraging credit cards and credit lines, and as a result, you're okay. And simply put, this means that you can now outbid other advertisers, your competitors, and win the ad auctions. And please remember that every ad platform is an auction for the customer. Those who are willing to pay more will win more auctions. You'll also have a higher CAC, but it's not about how high your CAC is, it's about how can you afford that CAC. LTV is one of those ways. So going back to growth for this brand, really fun brand, as I said, this was one way we were able to basically scale the CPG brand so aggressively in 2023. It's high LTV, high margins, and the fact that they're investment backed, so cash was not necessarily tight for them, allowed us to scale and meant that we could take more risk, make back our money on a 60-day basis and not go bankrupt. Now top that up with the compounding effect of this business having subscriptions available to them. It's the perfect combo and a money-making machine, and also a great investment if you are an investor. Now for these guys, our main focus was scaling ad spend within the limits that I just talked about and making sure that we had a great functioning website, conversion rate was high, and most importantly, the creative was on point, meaning from a data standpoint, our creative was at the best that it could be. We had the best possible creatives because we measure our creatives with the ADA framework, and that's how we always break it down for the last 7 years of running this company, for working with all these brands. Now the ADA framework breaks down things via 3 main key verticals within your creative: your thumb stop, your average watch time, and your click-through rate percentage. And it's all in a hierarchy order, meaning that if you improve your thumb stop, you automatically improve the average watch time and you automatically improve thereby the click-through rate, which gives you a certain ROAS. Now what we look for is typically, for a good ad, a minimum of 30% thumb stop, average watch time of 7 seconds or more, and a click-through rate of 2% or more is what we class as a good creative on ads. Now if you're beating that already based on your current metrics, then you're already on track to outcompete everybody in your industry, and you have a massive advantage when trying to scale. Brand number 2. Now this brand is a whole different category and required a different approach because the business numbers are very different. This brand is within the fashion wearable space. It has a much higher AOV, way lower margins, and due to that, it doesn't also have a high LTV because it's expensive and people don't need to come back every single month and buy this product. But it did have one amazing advantage. It had amazing organic presence. Now you might be thinking, if you're in the DTC space, you're running ads, you're an e-commerce brand, why on earth does organic even matter? I've been told it's just ads. Well, you're either going to agree with what I'm about to say, or you're going to be very surprised. Now, there is a thing in e-commerce that we refer to as the percentage of organic to paid ratio. This is one metric that can make or break brands like this with similar margins and within a similar sort of industry or category. Now, I'm not exaggerating this either. This brand had a 28% of organic to paid ratio. And that, by the way, is a very high number, but they did a great job at marketing themselves and going viral a lot through the last year. Now, what this means for you as a business owner is the fact that you just unlocked a lot more money to spend for your brand profitably. Now, I'm going to explain this in a way that makes sense. Now, take into account that your cost to acquire a customer is around, let's say, $100. If you have a 30% of organic to paid ratio, that means that your business is now actually having a back-end cost to acquire a customer of your advertising cost, that $100 minus percentage of organic to paid, that 30%. So you essentially have a $70 back-end business cost to acquire a customer, meaning you now have $30 of potential cost to acquire a customer to play with. And in the advertising world, that can mean spending from a few $100,000s extra to maybe even millions and making millions back as a result. That is why percentage of organic to paid is so important. And the amount of businesses that we come across that have a negative percentage of organic and don't even know about it is pretty insane. It's crazy. Now, if you want to learn about how to calculate your percentage of organic, reach out to my team. They'll get back to you and we'll help you out in any way that we can, or at least guide you in the right direction. Now, another reason why this is so important is businesses at this level, brand number 2, between 10 to 20 million range, they just cannot simply rely on ads to make their business profitable. Your ads, in fact, at this scale probably aren't going to be profitable. The only reason why this brand had it is because the AOV was higher because it's a more expensive product. Now, as we said, the more you spend, the higher your CAC becomes. What we found typically is somewhere around that 300 to 500K 10K a month in ad spend, you typically hit your ceiling for most businesses, meaning that spending more does not equal to more profits or cheaper customers. So where does that offset have to come from? Well, usually that offset comes from three different things. You have to either improve your store conversion rate, and to be honest with you, that's very hard to do if it's already good. The second thing that you can do is you can increase your creative metrics, aka increase your click-through rate, like I talked about in the ADA framework. However, this is also very hard to do depending on what your benchmarks are. If you already have amazing creative, topping the industry average standard, to increase it by another 20% is going to be very, very difficult. And lastly, you can improve your product margins, but the ability for most businesses to go back to the supplier and say, hey, we want 10, 15, 20% better margins on our product is going to be unlikely. It's not good to bet the house on that or make forecasts as a result of those three metrics. So where else can you go? Well, percentage of organic is one of those spots, and diversifying outside of ads, becoming viral, word of mouth, etc. Gifting products to influential people that your customers either see a lot or consume the content of, doing incentives to share your product and so forth. These are the ways that you can then scale between that 10 to 20 million revenue range and how you can basically excel as a brand within that cohort. Now, moving on, brand number 3. Notice something interesting. As we go higher and higher in terms of yearly revenue figures, we're growing way less aggressively per year. Why? Because these brands now understand the numbers and they play the game within the rules that they can afford. Now, we've had many brands come to us and say, we want to hit 5 million a month in 10 months time, and we're making $1 million a month or 500K a month, and we want to get to that 5 million a month number. Now, you need to understand that if you want to scale that aggressively, it's not going to come profitably. And unless you have investment dollars to burn and investors that are okay with that, which most won't be if they're smart, then slow and steady at scale is really what wins the race, especially for brands, as I said earlier, with LTV. With this brand, we had to take a much more calculated approach. Now, this brand is in the supplement space. However, its LTV is not actually that high. Its averages around 17% in 60 days. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It does have high margins. It was also doing around 20 million in the previous year before that. So it had a lot of recurring revenue that was compounding and building up as a result of the last 3 to 4 years of actually trading and being in business. So what did we do differently to scale this business up? How did we add another $8 million for this brand? Now, you'd be surprised to know when it comes to spending, we actually only scaled up spending by around circa 10% from the year before. And yet we made another $10 million out of it and increased our MER, our return, as a result. But how do we do that? Well, it's all about the business fundamentals, which I talked about earlier. Now, this brand had one advantage, similarly to brand number 1. It had a really great percentage of organic to paid ratio, which was around 25% across the year. It also is in retail, so that organic presence is basically multiplied more because people are buying it and seeing it in stores. And as I said, it's a consumable business. So when people run out, they come back and buy again. So it still has an existing LTV. Now in 2022, when we scaled it to 20 million per year, we hit their CAC regression, and we simply couldn't afford to spend more, which is what I talked about earlier. And it does happen, and it does happen to every single brand, whether you believe it or not. Meaning we can no longer say, let's just spend more on ads, and as a result, our return is going to be more and our profits are going to be more. In actuality, if we spent way more, we would have lost a lot more on profits. And even though the revenue would look inflated, profits would be down. So we took a step back with the founders in 2023, and we said, look, we're only going to scale up ad spend by 10% this year. You have compounding returning revenue that is increasing every single month for your business. You have subscribers, and our customers come back and buy. In addition to that, you're going to be in a lot more stores this year. We can push email and SMS more. We can try unique offers to basically increase our subscription LTV. And by the end of the year, we can basically map that out and action upon it to make sure that we get more profits, more revenue without sacrificing anything. And in addition to that, we also instructed them to start taking organic a lot more seriously at the end of 2022. Also bear in mind, if you start to increase your organic, it takes time. You don't go viral overnight. And from there, they pushed a lot more content. They got a lot more viral. They followed the trends of what really works. And they basically pushed their brand numbers up a lot, which moved the needle for them. And as a result, it worked. We actually managed to grow 35% at the end of the year. And the brand was really happy. We were really happy. And that was a result of the percentage of organic increasing way more than we could have imagined. And because of that, we got to spend a little more. And the forecast ended up being ahead of schedule, which is something that we were thrilled about. And that's that. So if you learned something new, let us know in the comments. If anything confused you, let me know in the comments. And if you want to know how you can scale your own e-commerce businesses to 5 million, 10 million a year, and a lot more than that, and the different strategies required between each stage, then don't hesitate to reach out to me or my team. We do free audits 7 days of the week. And at the very least, we'll help you guide you in the right direction that you should be going. Thanks again for watching. My name is Arsalan, and I'll see you on the next one.